Today, inshallah, we're going to continue commenting on Muqaddimah fi Usool Tafseer لأحمد بن عبد الحليم بن تيمية رحمه الله, written by Ahmad ibn Abd al-Halim ibn Taymiyyah. And we reached the point where he says, والمقصود أن الحديث الطويل إذا روي مثلا من وجهين مختلفين من غير مواطأة امتنع عليه أن يكون غلطا كما امتنع أن يكون كذبا، فإن الغلط لا يكون في قصة طويلة متنوعة وإنما يكون في بعضها، فإذا روى هذا قصة طويلة متنوعة ورواها الآخر مثل ما رواها الأول من غير مواطأة امتنع الغلط في جميعها كما امتنع الكذب في جميعها من غير مواطأة. It is translated more or less. The point here is that if a hadith has been narrated from two different chains without collaboration, then it cannot be a mistake or a lie. A lengthy story cannot be one big mistake. Rather, parts of it may contain errors. Therefore, if a person narrates a long and detailed story, and another narrates exactly the same story without collusion, then both stories cannot be a mistake, just as they cannot be lies. And we went over this and elaborated on it, right? So we provided the narrational as well as the rational justifications for accepting this position. So the nature of the story or the nature of the narration will determine how it is measured in terms of the authenticity. And in approaching the narration, whether that is related to tafsir or any other science that are related to taking narrations from, then the role of the researcher is to make sure that he will avoid or that he will maintain or observe four caveats. What are they, ikhwan? First of all, he needs to make sure that it's not a lie, it's not a mistake, that it's not coincidental, and that it's not collusional. So this is the frame of work where a person would function, will work, would operate to make sure that everything is set and everything that will harm the narration is avoidable. Then he continued rahimahullah in saying ولهذا إنما يقع في مثل ذلك غلط في بعض ما جرى في القصة مثل حديث اشتراء النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعيرا من جابر، فإن من تأمل طرقه علم قطعا أن الحديث صحيح وإن كانوا قد اختلفوا في مقدار الثمن، وقد بين ذلك البخاري في صحيحه. فإن جمهور ما في البخاري ومسلم مما يقطع بأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قاله لأن غالبه من هذا النحو، ولأنه قد تلقاه أهل العلم بالقبول والتصديق، والأمة لا تجتمع على خطأ، فلو كان الحديث كذبا في نفس الأمر والأمة مصدقة له قابلة له لكانوا قد أجمعوا على تصديق ما هو في نفس الأمر كذب، وهذا إجماع على الخطأ وذلك ممتنع. وإن كنا نحن بدون الإجماع نجوز الخطأ أو الكذب على الخبر فهو كتجويزنا قبل أن نعلم الإجماع على العلم الذي ثابت بظاهر أو قياس ظني أن يكون الحق في الباطن بخلاف ما اعتقدناه، فإذا أجمعوا على الحكم جزمنا بأن الحكم ثابت باطنا وظاهرا. It says, as such, based on what has been already established, they said, as such, the mistakes which occur can be concerned in certain details within the story, like the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ bought a camel from Jabir. Whoever contemplates the different chains of the hadith will realize that the hadith is authentic. It should be also added categorically or with certainty. We know that the story happened. As for the details, they need to examine the details. But as for the event itself, it happened. It took place. He said that, like the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ bought a camel from Jabir. Whoever contemplates the different chains of the hadith will realize that the hadith is authentic, even though the narrations differ concerning the exact price of the camel. This is also explained by Al-Bukhari in his Sahih, meaning that Al-Bukhari rahimahullah, basically the story of Jabir radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet ﷺ was in a journey, or actually was in an expedition, him and the army. Jabir was there. What Jabir radiallahu anhu said, because he is the one reporting this hadith, he said radiallahu anhu, I had a camel. I was on its mount, and that camel was, absolutely slow. So I intended to just let it go. I don't want to mount it. I don't want to ride it. So what happened is that, هذا صحيح hadith. So what happened, he said that the Prophet ﷺ came to me and he saw me struggling with this camel. So what he did, he hit him and he made dua for it. Then he said, and then it was very good. Then he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam to me, do you want to buy, do you want to sell it? I said, okay. Now, there are multiple narrations how much he sallallahu alaihi wasallam intended to pay for him. We have some narrations بأوقية, يعني 40 dirhams, 1 ounce. Okay, 1 ounce. Another narration says 400 dirhams. 400 dirhams. 400 dirhams. Some narrations 200 dirhams. Some 500 dirhams. So there are multiple narrations about the price. While the event is only one event. The thing is that Jabir agreed that the Prophet ﷺ will, he agreed to sell the camel on the condition واشترطت حملانه إلى أهله until we reach to Al-Madinah. So he said to the Prophet ﷺ, I stipulate that I will sell the camel to you, but I will ride it until we go to Al-Madinah. So he ﷺ accepted. That was the deal. Then he said that we went to Al-Madinah. Then I brought the camel to the Prophet ﷺ. Then he ﷺ gave him the money and he said, Barakallahu laka fi jamalik. Take your camel. So he ﷺ dealt with him so nicely. But the thing is that the ulama differed, the reporters, the narrators differed as per the price. Was it 1 ounce, 400, 200, 500? Does that affect the story? Not at all. Not at all. Whatever the price is, the rulings are going to be the same. What does the author rahimahullah say? That he says that this is not going to affect the story. And Al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he reported it in his book As-Sahih in a way, what he opined. He opined rahimahullah, he opined it to be for one uqiyah. 40 الأقية 40 درهما 40 dirhams. Okay, بأقية 40 dirhams. So then the thing is that there is no problem with these differences. They are settled either by giving priority to one utterance over the other, or that these utterances, even if they are not determined, they won't affect the narration. That's what the author rahimahullah is saying. Then he went on to talk about Al-Bukhari and Muslim. He said rahimahullah, for the majority of what is in Bukhari and Muslim can be ascribed to the Prophet ﷺ with certainty. We know for surety that these are ascribed to the Prophet ﷺ. These narrations, whether these are statements, actions, or approvals, or descriptions. The majority of that which is in Al-Bukhari and Muslim, we know for surety. Why? Because once we apply these 4 caveats, they will escape them. So they cannot be mistaken. They cannot be mistaken. They cannot be a lie. They cannot be conspiratorially, nor they are coincidence. Because of this, we know with certainty that they are ascribed to the Prophet ﷺ. And then he added on to the reasons because of which we will determine them to be, we will decide them to be certain. He said, as it is of this caliber, and the Ummah has accepted it as such. The Ummah accepted it as such. The majority of that which is in Al-Bukhari and Muslim. And we're talking about the Ummah, we're talking about the people of Al-Hadith. We're not talking about people who don't understand Al-Hadith, that they will agree or disagree. Like now, does the ulama affect an issue in physics? If Abu Bakr disagrees with an issue related to chemistry, is that going to affect anything there? No. So when we're talking about issues related to hadith, then the acceptance of it or rejectability of it is only related to who? To those يعني specialists. ولهذا he said, and the Ummah has accepted it as such. ولهذا البخاري رحمه الله, when he wrote his book, he showed it to multiple scholars. He showed it to 4, as Abu Ja'far al-Uqayli رحمه الله mentioned. He showed it, يعني it was peer reviewed by very high standard people. He showed it to Ahmad ibn Hanbal, to Abu Zur'a, to Yahya ibn Ma'in, and to Ali ibn al-Madini. يعني one is enough. يعني peer reviewed. الآن يا إخوة مثلا الآن when we show مثلا imagine you have a paper in physics that it was peer reviewed by Albert Einstein, then Oakland Bismarck, then Edward Barkin, and the 4th you can name one. مثلا let's take of the مثلا Robert Hike, and then you have 4 names. These are giants in the field, and they say that we agree with you with everything except 4%, or not actually 4%, that we agree with 0.001%, because they all agreed with the hadith that they match the standard of al-sahih, of the authenticity. Only they disagreed with 4 hadith. Only they disagreed with 4 hadith. يقول أبو جعفر العقيلي والقول قول البخاري, and the preponderancy is the preponderancy of al-Bukhari. Let's suppose that they disagreed with 100, not 4, 100, with a very meticulous examination, and it passes that. And by the way, يعني they're not saying that they are weak or they are rejected, but they don't meet the high standard, because this was his intention, the most authentic narrations. فإذن, so what we're saying is that the majority of that which is in al-Bukhari is accepted by the people of al-Hadith. Ad-Daraqutni came after, and then he criticized. And the criticism of Ad-Daraqutni is not that he criticized al-Bukhari, and this is very important to know, that he didn't reject the hadith. He's saying that they don't match the standard. Yeah, they are accepted, but not to the standard that you put, not up to the measurement that you put. Okay? Or it is authentic as the matan, but not this chain. Yeah, you should have not chosen this chain. Sometimes he didn't criticize him for what he added. He said for what is in the book. Sometimes he criticized him for why you didn't add a hadith. It's called al-ilzamat. Yani, since you have narrated this hadith in this mas'ala, you should have reported this hadith in this mas'ala. So it is academic discussion, like what you call it. It's very scholarly criticism. So it's not about people they don't know what they are talking about. They are exactly know what they are talking about. They are masterful of what they are talking about. Okay. Then he said, rahimahullah. So as it is of this caliber, and the Ummah has accepted as such, and the whole Muslim nation cannot unite upon error. Meaning that if the Muslim scholars agreed on this issue, that they agreed that the majority of al-Bukhari is Muslim, يعني the muhaddithun who examined al-Bukhari, who examined Muslim during their time and after their time, they agreed that the majority of what is in these 2 books, especially in al-Bukhari, these are acceptable. Then the Ummah cannot unite on an error. As he said, لا تجتمع أمتي على ضلالة. And Allah says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. We talked about the evidence of the ijma'. Nobody amongst the scholars of al-Hadith, we're not talking about any scholar, the scholars of al-Hadith, would disagree that the majority of that which is in al-Bukhari and Muslim is acceptable. But let's suppose that al-Bukhari and Muslim are gone. We don't find them. All the narrations in these books are available. They just collected them from different sources up to a standard that is the most authentic. But you won't find any hadith in al-Bukhari nor in Muslim that is not in other book, in other sources, in other collections. You'll find it in Muwatta Malik, في جامع سفيان, you will find it in in all the books, in the Bakr ibn Abi Shayba, في مصنف عبد الرزاق, في صحيفة Hammam, whatever. So these are there. Books that we don't have them anymore, but the narrations are all scattered in the sources, or books we have them, or have some of them, not all of them. Okay? Then he said, rahimahullah, for a hadith is a lie, for if a hadith is a lie, but the Ummah accepts it as a truthful, they have in essence accepted a lie. And the Ummah in general is infallible to do so, as we have established في دليل إجماع, the evidence of general consensus. He said, this is unity upon error and is impossible. How do we know that it is impossible? How do we know that this ummah is impossible to unite on an error? How do we know? Through the book of Allah, through the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why the general consensus is one of the major evidences utilizable to affirm or negate issues related to the Islamic legislation. He said, without unity and consensus, it is possible that a narration contains a mistake or a lie, right? ولهذا you need to differentiate between two possibilities. There is what we call, or two impossibilities. We have the rational impossibility, which is like contradiction, okay, paradoxy, okay, in some of its forms. Not every paradoxy, like opposition. These are impossibilities. Again, what is rational impossibility? ما لا يمكن اجتماعهما ويمكن ما لا يتصور إلا معدوما. That which is only perceived to be non-existent. This is what we call impossibility. There are multiple types of impossibilities, like contradiction. Okay, the love of identity, if it is lacked, opposition, some forms of paradoxes. These are all impossibilities. These are called rational or reasonable or rational impossibilities. We have another type of impossibility, that is impossibility through irregularity or through senses. يعني something could be possible rationally, but it's impossible sensically. يعني for example, there is nothing in your mind would say that you can walk on your head. Right? Your mind, your reason does not prevent this. Nothing in your mind prevents it. There is no impossibility, rationally speaking. But it's impossible to be as a habit, taken from our observation of the world. Okay? It is possible for the sun to rise from the west. Is it possible? Rationally speaking, yes. But we say that it's impossible to be through observation. This is what we have observed. Now, once established that you differentiate between the two possibilities or the two impossibilities, now, for every science, for every field of knowledge, there are things for the specialists, they consider them to be impossible. How do we know that? Not because of the rational impossibility, but because of what? The regulatory impossibility. They know through observation. يعني مثلا, they know through observation if there is a major hadith. Now this is related to the science of al-hadith. If there is a major rule related to zakah, salah, or there is a major in that particular issue where we find that hadith is only reported by the people of Sham, then is it possible to be authentic? Is it possible to be authentic, rationally speaking? Yes, but through observation, because of our practice. Do we know that? We know that it's impossible. It reaches the level of impossibility to be. هل هذا واضح يا إخوة? So now, is it possible for the ummah? Is it possible for the ummah to unanimously agree on a narration, and that narration in reality is a lie? Rationally, yes. Rationally, yes. But because we have the already established evidence that the ummah cannot unite on an issue, and that issue is a lie or an error. Because of that, we say that if the ummah agrees on a narration, then that narration becomes impossible to be mistaken, impossible to be a lie, impossible to be colluded, impossible to be conspiratorial. Impossible. How do we know that? Not because of the nature of the narration, but because of the already established evidence that makes it or render this issue to be impossible. هذا واضح؟ ولهذا look what the Shaykh رحمه الله said, that this unity upon error, and he said that this unity upon error and is impossible. Without unity and consensus, it is possible that a narration contains a mistake or a lie. Just as this is possible in an analogy in which the truth may be in the opposite of what we believed. Because, like what we talked before, the types of the evidences that we derive from which rulings are either to be narrational or derivational or rational. The most important evidence of the rational evidences is analogy. Now, if we have analogy, the analogy itself is possible to be mistaken. But let's suppose that we have an issue where it is derivational through analogy, but the ummah all agreed on the ruling derived from analogy. Then we know that it's impossible for that analogy to be mistaken, to be a mistake, or to be mistaken, or to be not accurate, and so on and so forth. We know for surety that that analogy is correct because the ummah unites on its authenticity, on its acceptability. وهكذا. Another واضح? So then you need to differentiate between the possibility, which we call it الإمكان العقلي، وعندنا آخر ما يسمى بالإمكان العقلي، بالإمكان الحسي. يعني now, is it possible that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, is it possible for Abu Bakr that he died as a disbeliever? Rationally, yeah. Possible, yeah. But the moment that you know first of all, if you read his biography, the more you know about him, and secondly, the more you understand the nusus and you see the categoriality that the nusus comes up with, that he is the best person after the Prophet ﷺ in this ummah, actually after all the prophets, then you know for surety that it is impossible for him to die as a disbeliever. It's just impossible. واضح? And you can experience this. مثلا, let's suppose that one of your co-workers, you're a boss, then you have an employee who works for 30 years with you. He never missed a day. Okay? Then one day he didn't come. He does not come. Is it possible that he does not come because he is lazy? Rationally speaking, yes. But you've been with him for 30 years. For you, it's impossibility that he didn't come because of laziness. Something happened. Even if you are not able to specify it, but you know for surety, for category, you are certain 100% that something happened to this person. That's why he didn't come. Okay? So then there is a difference between the rational possibility and the regular possibility, or the impossibilities. ولهذا sometimes it is possible that that reporter is going to be acceptable. It is possible, but through regular, the practice of al-muhaddithun, they know that it's impossible to happen. Impossible that we accept from that report. Okay? Then he said, however, once unity is achieved upon a matter, we affirm its wording and meaning. What does he mean, rahimahullah? He says that we understand, we understand not only that we affirm the narration, but also we affirm that which it denotes. Because they agreed on the narration and they agreed on the issue it contains, that narration. هذا واضح? So once they agree on an issue, once the ulama rahimahullah agreed on a narration and that narration contains some meaning, then they agreed on the evidence and they agreed on the evidenced. They agreed on that very evidence and that what it denotes. واضح? He said, for this reason, ولهذا قال يقول هذا كان جمهور أهل العلم من جميع الطوائف على أن خبر الواحد إذا تلقته الأمة بالقبول تصديقا له أو عملا به أنه يوجب العلم، وهذا هو الذي ذكر المصنفون في أصول الفقه من أصحاب أبي حنيفة ومالك والشافعي وأحمد، إلا فرقة قليلة من المتأخرين اتبعوا في ذلك طائفة من الكلام أنكروا ذلك، ولكن كثيرا من الكلام أو أكثرهم يوافقون فقهاء وأهل الحديث والسلف على ذلك، وهو قول أكثر الأشعرية كأبي إسحاق وابن فورك. وأما ابن الباقلاني فهو الذي أنكر ذلك وتبعه مثل أبي المعالي وأبو حامد، مثل أبي المعالي وأبي حامد وأبي حامد وابن عقيل وابن الجوزي وابن عقيل وابن الجوزي وابن الخطيب والآمدي ونحو ذلك ونحو هؤلاء. والأول هو الذي ذكره الشيخ أبو حامد وأبو الطيب وأبو إسحاق وأمثالهم من أئمة الشافعية، وهو الذي ذكره القاضي عبد الوهاب وأمثاله من المالكية، والذي ذكره شمس الدين السرخسي وأمثاله من الحنفية، وهو الذي ذكره أبو يعلى وأبو الخطاب وأبو الحسن بن الزاغوني وأمثاله من الحنبليين. وإذا كان الإجماع على تصديق الخبر موجبا للقطع به فالاعتبار في ذلك إجماع. طيب, okay, so it is translated more or less. He says, for this reason, the majority of scholars from all the different schools of thought agree that it should be from all the different schools of jurisprudence, al-fiqh, agree that if a hadith reported with a single narrator in its chain of narration is accepted or approved by action, then it is sufficient as evidence. The majority of the majority of the fuqaha, the jurists from all the schools of jurisprudence accept the fact that a narration that is accepted by the ummah, even if it's reported by a solitary narration, meaning that it's reported as ahad without infrequency, infrequent narration, solitary narration, although by itself it entails what? One, and requires action. But if we have a solitary narration that is accepted by the ummah, then that solitary narration not only denotes action or the requirement or the categoriality of the action, but also al-ilm. We know for surety. It's not more likely, it's knowledge. We know for surety that this is the case. Clear, inshallah? So then if you have a solitary narration, the already established ruling is that it denotes what? Uncategoriality, but it entails action. توجب العمل, as we talked about this before. However, there are things that will render that narration to be acceptable as certain narration, as it will also requires it to be enacted categorically. هل هذا واضح? One of the things that will render it to be as such is that if it is acceptable by the ummah. If the Ummah accepts a solitary narration, it will render it to be categorical. Yani not only that we are required to act upon the denotation of that narration, but also we know that its affirmation, its authenticity is certain. Okay? Then he said, rahimahullah, he said that if a hadith reported with a single narration and its chain of narration is accepted or approved by action, then it is sufficient as if it. This is mentioned by the authors of Usool al-Fiqh from all the school of fiqh. The student of Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i and Ahmad. This opinion is opposed by a minority of later time scholars. يعني usuliyun, those who were usulis, but of later generations, meaning after what? After the ijma' has already been established. وهذا يا إخوة, any ijma' amongst the, that is presented by the later generations, especially and particularly if that ijma' is taken and established during the first three generations, then we know that ijma' is what? That difference is what? Neglected. Okay, we threw it out. We don't care about it. That's why he said, rahimahullah, this opinion is opposed by a minority of later time scholars who choose the opinion of some theologians, okay, ulama al-kalam. Yani they were usulis, but they were affected, influenced by who? By the theologians. Okay, whom are the theologians? We talked about this before. Those, as claimed, utilize their reasonable or rational approaches to achieve two things: to prove the religious creed or dogmas or doctrines, and to defend them. Okay, to defend them against those who oppose them. This is what is called علم الكلام. هو إثبات العقائد الدينية بالأدلة العقلية والدفاع عنها. That's what they mean علماء الكلام. يعني if you're talking about معتزلة, الأشاعرة, ماتريدية, كلابية, those are called theologians, متكلمون. Okay, theo, God in the Greek language. Ology always is what? Study of, the study of God, the study of belief. And usually ulama al-kalam, they divide their science into three categories. First, they call it al-ilahiyat. Then they have things that are called as-sam'iyat. Then they have something that is called al-nubuwat. Sometimes they have al-ilahiyat, then al-nubuwat, then al-sam'iyat. Sometimes they are only having two categories. They have al-ilahiyat and al-sam'iyat. Ilahiyat يعني related to Allah, to the deity. Al-sam'iyat related to al-yawm al-akhir, al-jannah, al-nar. Okay, al-sirat. These are called sam'iyat, because they are based upon hearings. They say, you don't come to the conclusion through what? Through reason. As for al-ilahiyat, theological issues, they are proven through reason. They are only proven through reason. They say that if you prove them through narration, and the narration to be proved is based upon reason, then this is a circle reason. Okay? And if you say that they are not, that they are, then there are four possibilities to them. Either that you reject both, or you accept both, or you accept one over the other. Which is either that, if you'd like to make them four, either you accept reason over narration, or narration over reason. So they say that we cannot reject them both, meaning that they both are going to be correct, so that we're going to reject, both are going to be wrong. We cannot also accept them both to be correct. Then what we're going to do, we're going to give a priority to reason, because it is only only we approve narration through reason. Okay? How? Because in order to, the first thing is that you need to prove that the Creator exists, and this is only for them proved through what? Through reason. For them, we are not born with it. We need to prove it rationally. But the first obligation upon us is what? Another, or doubt. Okay? The thing is that this is the meaning of theologians. So we have some usulis of later generations who were influenced by the theologians. He said, however, the majority of theologians, okay, the majority of theologians agree with the jurist. Yeah, the majority of ulama al-kalam, they agree with the jurist. He said, scholars of hadith and predecessors on this. Okay, يعني the scholars of hadith, which is actually those who are in charge of this issue, they all agree on this issue. Nobody would disagree. Then, and also this is the position of as-Salaf. This is the position of the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, and also the position of the majority of the theologians. So they are violating what? An already established ijma. He said that this is the opinion of the majority of Ash'arite schools or scholars such as Abu Ishaq and Ibn Fawrak. أبو إسحاق يعني هذا أبو إسحاق الإسفرايني ده الأستاذ, the very well known الأستاذ يا إخوة is a Persian word, it's not an Arabic word. الأستاذ معناه الحاذق, the one who masters something, it is called أستاذ. if you hear الأستاذ, especially amongst the Ash'ariyya, then they are talking about who? أبو إسحاق الإسفرايني. الإسفرايني. Isfarayini is a place in Iran. Okay? Abu Ishaq al-Isfarayini. And also Ibn Fawrak or Ibn Fawrak. Sometimes it is Ibn Fawrak, sometimes it is Ibn Fawrak. Ibn Fawrak, he was Ash'ari, but he was amongst the early generations of Ash'ariyya. Like it, because we have Al-Ash'ariyya, those, or we don't need to talk about this. Huh? يعني in a brief, we need to cover هذا. يعني I'm afraid this semester will finish without covering it. We need to cover it. So in a brief introduction to what Al-Ash'ariyya is. Al-Ash'ariyya are those people adhering to the belief of Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. Who is Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari? His name is Ali ibn al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. He died around 325, 324, 326, 323. يعني early in the fourth century age. Okay, he was heavily influenced. He used to be Mu'tazili. He took his belief from Abu Hashim al-Jubbai. And then they had a dispute. Then he moved then he was influenced by Abdullah ibn Sa'id ibn Kullab. Okay, there was متكلم, a theologian by the name of Abdullah ibn Sa'id ibn Kullab. He was during the time of Ahmad, and Ahmad rahimahullah used to warn against him. He was influenced by him, so he left Mu'tazilites. He was Kullabites for some reason, for some time. Then, the later stage of his life, he was so close to the madhab of as-Salaf. We're talking about the belief of as-Sifat, the belief of al-Iman, the belief of al-Qadr. As for as-Sahaba and Ahl al-Bayt, he was completely unmatched with the belief of as-Salaf. But as for as-Sifat, he was so close actually. For كذلك القدر في الأسماء والأحكام, the belief, al-Iman, the faith, he was a close. You can find this in his two books, Al-Ibana في أصول الديانة, and secondly رسالة إلى أهل الثغر في باب الأبواب. He reported actually 42 consensual agreements. Every ijma he mentioned, the later generations of the Ash'arites, of Al-Ash'ariyya, they violated. 42 ijma. Okay, in his epistle إلى أهل الثغر بباب الأبواب. The thing is that, so this is what we call, this is يعني أبو الحسن الأشعري. Then we have people who were يعني that they took it from him, or that they were at the same time يعني with the same caliber with him, like Abu al-Hasan al-Tabari, okay, like Ibn Forak هذا. So they used to be on the same caliber, and they exchanged يعني ideas and beliefs and وهكذا. Then we have a second generation of what we call al-Ash'ariyya, يعني those who are يعني adherents to the belief of al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. We have the likes of Abu Bakr al-Baqillani. He is actually called al-Ash'ari al-Thani. He is the leader. Okay? From whom? Abu al-Ma'ali al-Juwayni. Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, Abu al-Ma'ali al-Juwayni. Then we have al-Ghazali. Okay? Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. Also the likes of Abu Hamid al-Isfirayini. Then we have the third generation of al-Ash'ariyya, whom are still with us. Okay? Yani when you hear al-Ash'ariyya now, they are not related to the second generation, or definitely not the first generation. We have those who came after. On top of them is al-Khatib al-Razi. Okay? He is the the founder of what we call now modern day Mu'tazili, يعني contemporary Ash'ariyya. Okay? يعني مثلا if you read the issues, مثلا two major mutun that they have. مثلا they have متن called تحفة المريد. Okay? للدردير. لا هذه هي المتن هذا الذي شرحناه. اي نعم، جوهرة التوحيد. استغفر الله. لا في متن آخر، لا غير. طيب أولا عندنا جوهرة التوحيد. اوكي، التي للدردير. هذه العقيدة الرازي. It's the way يعني الرازي approaches issues. Then we have the other one also called مثل المواقف للإيجي or السنوسية. These are, yes, they disagree with the Razi, they accept it from him, but he is the pivot. Okay, he is the pivot, he is the center. So when he says rahimahullah here that this is the opinion of the majority of Ash'arite scholars such as Abu Ishaq and Ibn Fawrak, he's talking about the first generation and the second generation. Then he said, as for Ibn al-Baqillani, which is the top of the second generation, Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, he is the one who held the opposing opinion. ما يقبل الرواية إذا كانت رواية أحد. He said that it does, even if we have unanimous agreement amongst the muhaddithun in accepting that narration, he won't accept it. ولهذا أبو إسحاق الإسفرايني and Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, they used to oppose each other in many issues. This is one of them. He said, as for Ibn al-Baqillani, he is the one who held the opposing opinion and was followed by Abu Malik. What do you say here? Abu al-Ma'ali al-Juwayni. Al-Juwayni. هذا for Ash'ariyya is very important figure. Okay, Abu al-Ma'ali they call him. And he was, he was smart, definitely. He was smart and he was prolific. He produced a lot. Definitely he was not guided. Although that he, bihamdillah, at the later stages, that he accepted the majority of the belief of the Salaf in regards to as-sifat. Not in every bab, because al-Ash'ariyya, generally speaking, You know, what are usul abwab al-i'tiqad? What are the principles of beliefs or doctrines? The first one is that which is related to al-asma and al-sifat, or al-tawheed. Then we have asma al-sifat, iman, qadar, الأسماء والأحكام or الوعد وكذلك الوعيد. Then we have الصحابة وأهل البيت. Then we have الإمامة, okay, rulership. الأشعرية, they agree with أهل السنة in الإمامة. They agree with أهل السنة in الصحابة وأهل البيت, but they differ with أهل السنة and the rest. Al-Asma wal-Ahkam, because they are related to al-Iman. Sometimes they will be like the people of Sunnah, sometimes they will going to be murji'ah. Okay? مثلا التوحيد for them is completely not a tawheed that is propagated by al-Anbiya, by all the Anbiya. التوحيد for them is what? It is related to Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Like for al-Asma wal-Sifat, they negate مثلا action, generally speaking, not every generation, not every scholar in each generation, but generally speaking, they deny the action attributes. ما يثبتونها. They deny صفة العلو لله, and this is by all the Ash'ari of the later generations. Everybody amongst them, they say that you can't say that Allah Azza wa Jalla is above. تعالى الله عما يقولون. Then also as for al-Iman, Murji'ah, for them they say that al-Iman is only a belief. It's just in the heart. So for them it does not go up, nor it goes down. وذلك ما يقولون بزيادة الإيمان والنقصان. Okay? And so on and so forth. As for al-Qadr, they are Jabriyah, but they say they have invented, Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, he has invented something that he called it al-Kasb, and it's not pure invention. We have it in the Greek philosophy. We have it also in the Buddhist philosophy. We have it there. So he has something that is called al-Kasb, meaning that basically, yes, you have a will, but it's not influential. So who carried this pot or this thermos, or who? Not me. I didn't carry it. Yes, I have a will, but it's not influential. This is the action of Allah, and my will, my action, it means that I have an action. I have a will and I have an action, but it happened added, not by it. عنده لا به. Okay? Anyways, so these are their beliefs, generally speaking, about these usul abwab al-i'tiqad. So what does the Shaykh rahimahullah says? He said, وَأَمَّا ابْنُ الْبَاقِلَّةِ, as for Ibn al-Baqillani, he is the one who held the opposing opinion and was followed by Abu al-Ma'ari, because he was actually his student. And Abu Hamad and Abu Hamad al-Ghazali. Abu Hamad al-Ghazali, he was a student of Abu al-Ma'ari al-Juwani. He was heavily influenced by him. Again, al-Ghazali is so prolific. He wrote in every possible thing you can imagine, but only one thing في الحديث، لأنه يقول أنا في بضاعتي في الحديث مزجاة. يقول هو في إحياء علوم الدين. He said that my بضاعة my goods, my quality in al-hadith is muzjah. I have nothing. And he admits that. That's why he filled his book إحياء علوم الدين by hadith موضوع and so weak. ولهذا العراقي رحمه الله needed to go after him to make what we call takhrij, because this book spread all around. Because al-Ghazali used to be considered, they call him Hujjatul Islam. Hujjatul Islam. And he went also through 4 stages. He went through all 4 stages. He was, Descartes, by the way. Descartes, right? He was heavily influenced by him. the book on meditations, he copied it from Al-Munqidh min al-Dhalal. They found it in his library, in the library of Descartes. So he was heavily influenced by Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. And Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, he began as what? يعني pure Ash'ari. Then he went to be what? Mutasawwif. Then he went on to then he went to falsafa, to be a philosopher, and he was a philosopher. He knows philosophy very well, and he went on also to refute them in his book Tahabut al-Falasifa. He didn't say, by the way, the refutation of philosophy. He said the refutation of philosophers, but he didn't refute philosophy. He refutes philosophers, and the only philosophy that he knows is the philosophy of Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi, and they both take it from who? Aristotle. So anyways, so then he went on to At-Tasawwuf. So in his book he called it Al-Munqidh min al-Dhalal. Al-Munqidh min al-Dhalal. He wrote also a book, Al-Madhlum bi ala ghayri ahli, that it's not given for everybody. It's a secret book. He wrote a book called it this way: Al-Madhlum, the one that is held from those who are not eligible. Then he went on, later on, to something, on the track, because this is the majority of them. ولهذا sometimes if you see a person who is engaged in studying علم الكلام, the problem is not with those who spend a long time in it, because they will end up what? Knowing the problems in it. The problem is with those youngsters. That's the problem. فهذا أبو حامد الغزالي. So Abu Hamid al-Ghazali رحمه الله, he followed Abu al-Ma'ali al-Juwayni. ومثل ما قلنا, he wrote a lot. Al-Ghazali. He wrote a lot in every possible thing except al-Hadith. Whatever you think of, he used to write. And he was smart. He had a time he stayed about 6 months. His tongue was, he was not able to speak. Now I met a psychiatrist. He was actually an Egyptian. He studied his case. He said that he went through a deep depression. He was not able to speak. He was not able to produce anything. He was so sad. Anyways, فهذا أبو حامد. He said also Ibn Aqil. هذا Ibn Aqil, he is Hanbali. هذا he went also through 3 stages. He was Mu'tazili. He was so Mu'tazili actually. Then he went on to Ash'ari, to be an Ash'ari. Then he was Mufawwid. As the likes of the Hanabila. Okay? طيب, then he also talked, وهذا ابن عقيل. هذا ابن عقيل so prolific. The biggest book in human history, written by who? By Ibn Aqil. More than 92 volumes. That what has been only delivered to us. He called it Al-Funun. 92 volumes. You can imagine one volume to be around 700 to 1,000 pages. So the biggest book written by one individual was by who? Ibn Aqil. And he said when he reached the age of 80, he said that I feel that I am eager to study, write, summarize and memorize as I was in the 20s. Rahimahullah. And today he was listening to the radio. They were meeting in person. His age is 84. In American University channel. I think it's 6.1. They were interviewing him, and he said that his age is 84. He said that do you feel that you are anarchic? He said, yeah. I feel that I'm still anarchic. And he said that I never learned, and I don't know if this is something good or bad. Meaning that I just keep learning because I feel that I don't learn. Then he said that I don't know if this is going to be positive thing or negative thing, which is good. His age is 84. He might die not a Muslim. Allah. He said, Ibn al-Jawzi. Okay, Ibn al-Jawzi, he's also amongst the Hanabila, because look, Ibn al-Baqillani was Shafi'i. He was, Maliki and Shafi'i. Maliki and Shafi'i. As for Abu al-Ma'ani, he's Shafi'i. He's one of the leaders. There are a lot of books regarding fiqh al-Shafi'i. Abu Hamid Shafi'i. He had a very famous book amongst the Shafi'iyya called Al-Wajiz. He wrote 3 books. Okay? Al-Basit, Wal-Wasit, Wal-Wajiz. He said, وابن عقيل. وابن عقيل هذا حنبلي. وهي has a lot of books عندنا. معتبر هذا عندنا من أصحاب الأوجه في المذهب. وابن الجوزي رحمه الله. Also. He said, وابن الخطيب. ابن الخطيب هو أبو بكر الرازي. هذا الرازي. This is الرازي. الرازي. Very, very famous. هذا also. هذا يا أخو genius. He's genius. But he is absolutely misguided. هي فخر الدين. ابن خطيب الري يسمى. هذا يا أخوة, he is so genius. They mention a story about him. He used, when he walks in the streets, he will be at least surrounded by 120 students. So he is always crowded. He once passed by an elderly woman. And then they said, why all of this noise? He said that you don't know this person? هذا فخر الدين. He is the one able to prove the existence of Allah by more than 40 evidences. Then she said, had he not been doubtful, he didn't need all these evidences. See? قالت له ما شك. Because he is in doubt. That's why he need all of these evidences. And he has happened. هذا الرازي يا إخوة, he is the one that Ibn Taymiyyah put his head in his head. And this is the problem. And definitely because he's smart, he knows how to argue. He has books like, he was heavily influenced by al-Mu'tazila and the philosophers. He is smart and he is overthinking things. This is his problem. He thinks a lot, but without guidance. So if you are very smart but without guidance, you might end up in where? Actually, if it's with certainty, you will end up in a miserable situation. ولهذا يا إخوة, he had a book called مفاتيح الغيب or مفاتيح الغيب. It's a huge tafsir, speaking about tafsir. In many occasions, he would report, sometimes he will raise at least 13 issues. Then he will be silent about it. He does not know how to solve it. He knows how to deconstruct, but he does not know how to construct. He is so analytical. But he finds it difficult, subhanallah, to be guided. So he has, تأسيس التقديس, الأربعين في أصول الدين. He had a lot of books. Okay, محصل أفكار المتقدمين والمتأخرين. So he was so prolific, الرازي, and he was so smart. But he needs ولهذا what he noticed that anybody comes after, he is influenced by him. The arguments, the issues, the way that he approaches things. So what he did, he went on to fight him intellectually. ولهذا نقض التأسيس, he wrote a book called نقض التأسيس. هذا masterpiece. Amazing. هذا نقض التأسيس. He has 4 books رحمه الله on top. One of them is what he called it نقض التأسيس. نقض تأسيس الجهمية في تأسيس بدعهم الكلامية. He's arguing with who? With الرازي. He wrote a book called تأسيس التقديس رحمه الله. So هذا هو ابن الخطيب. So Ibn al-Khatib هذا, he is not of the opinion that if the Ummah agrees on a solitary narration, that it will render it to be certain. He said no, it will continue to be. They have their arguments. Don't think that they have arguments. They will argue. They have arguments and apparent evidences. عندهم شبهات عندهم. He said والآمدي, مثلا who is the most influential Christian apologetic in the last century and a half? Hmm? Was just debated by a Muslim. Yes. هذا يا أخوة, who made him? Who made this guy? The Muslim theologians, not Thomas de Aquina or Anselm, the Christian theologians. لا. He wrote, his PhD, his first PhD was what? About the Kalam arguments. So he was the best that they can produce in the last century and a half was heavily influenced by those. So you see how much influence that they were. Okay? William McRae, he went over a lot of philosophy, Western philosophy. They didn't help him. You need the Muslim theologians to be there. The thing is that one of the things is Ibn al-Khatib هذا اللي هو الرازي. He said والآملي أبو الحسن الآملي هذا he was also for them he was smart but without guidance. هذا الآملي definitely was one. ولهذا for him you can't prove God by the oneness of God. There is only one creator. You can't prove it by reason. Just look how smart he is. Maybe if he takes the IQ exam, he will take it all. While he drinking coffee. لكن he is misguided, subhanallah. He is just misguided. For him, that is only proved by a sama. And this, in many occasions, Al-Amali, he would say, rahimahullah, wa'afa anhu. He would say, وهذا مما نستخير الله به. I find it difficult. I seek istikhara from him. He would raise a lot of issues. Okay? مثل أبكار الأفكار. He had a book called أبكار الأفكار. أبكار, the virgin of ideas. هذا I think most Christians during that time, they don't even what's going on. Okay? It's very heavy. A lot of ideas. But misguidance. Look يا إخوة, if you think مثلا الآن هذا الجاي اللي هو Steve Hopkins, was he smart? Anybody here says that he's stupid? Not smart, he's genius, but he's misguided. And he is able to solve very complicated equations with minute accuracy. What? Misguidance. That won't lead him to something to be correct in reality, that it would match reality. But the way he thinks is very smart. Okay? فإذا a person can be smart, can be genius actually, outsmarter than everybody, but he's misguided. ما عنده هداية. He said والأول هو الذي ذكره الشيخ. He said والأول هو الذي ذكره الشيخ أبو حامد وأبو الطيب وأبو إسحاق وأمثالهم من أئمة الشافعية. He said والأول, meaning that we accept solitary narrations if the ummah generally accepted it. He said that it is, the first opinion is also supported by Shaykh Abu Hamid who al-Isfarayini, not Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. He just mentioned to you Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, he is not working with this. Is Abu Hamid al-Isfarayini, not Abu Ishaq al-Isfarayini, Abu Hamid. He said Abu Tayyib هذا الطبري, هذا Shafi'i also. He was from a Shafi'iyya. He said Abu Ishaq هذا الشيرازي, هذا أبو إسحاق الشيرازي صاحب اللمع. Okay? He said, and their likes from the Shafi'i school. Also, he said, وهو الذي ذكر القاضي عبد الوهاب, قاضي عبد الوهاب and his likes from the Maliki school. القاضي عبد الوهاب معروف, له كتب معروفة عند المالكي, he Usool. He said, also شمس الدين السرخسي and others from the Hanafi school. شمس الدين صاحب المبسوط, الذي له المبسوط. So then, what he's saying, rahimahullah, also he said وهو الذي ذكره أبو يعلى وأبو الخطاب وأبو الحسن بن الزاغوني وأمثال الحنبلية. أبو يعلى, أبو الخطاب, and Abu al-Hasan al-Zawuni from the Hanbali school. So what he's saying, rahimahullah, this is the, all the jurists, they accepted. Only the later generations who were influenced by some theologians, they disagree. while the majority of the theologians, they consider it to be acceptable. What do we mean by it being acceptable? Because they accept it to be acceptable in terms of what? Action. But not only that, we consider it to be acceptable in terms of knowledge. And not only it entails or requires action, but also it entails certainty. We know and we act, both. Not that it's more likely and then we go to act. الأوثر رحمه الله says وإذا كان الإجماع على تصديق الخبر موجبا للقطع به فالاعتبار بذلك بإجماع أهل العلم بالحديث كما الاعتبار بالإجماع على الأحكام بإجماع أهل العلم بالأمر والنهي والإباحة. He said if consensus upon a narration is sufficient in establishing it, then the consensus which is applicable is that of the scholars of hadith. Just as consensus in the practical rulings is sought with the scholars who specialize in orders, prohibitions and recommendations, so is the case with this. Yani, now when we're talking about the consensus, because again, a solitary narration would entail, like what we established, the requirement of action, but without the certainty of the denotation. Okay? We established that if it is that if the Ummah agreed on the acceptance of that narration, then we would consider it to be what? To be categorical in terms of the denotation and the requirement of the action. Right? Now, what is this consensus that we're looking for? The unity that we're looking for? It is the unity of the scholars of al-Hadith. So it's not the scholars of any science, it is the scholars of al-Hadith. If they all agree on it, if they all accept it, then even if we have some jurists that they disagree, or we have some grammarians that they disagree, their disagreement, it's the same as their agreement. It does not affect anything because this is related to a hadith issue. So therefore we refer to the specialists. So therefore if we find the ulama al-hadith consensually agree on the issue of accepting a narration, even if it is a solitary narration, which then it would render it to be categorical in terms of the authenticity, as well as in terms of the requirement of the action. Okay? He said that it is the same, just as it is the case if we're looking for the jurisprudential consensus, then it is the consensus of the jurists. Okay? يعني علماء الحلال وكذلك الحرام. The same thing. So it is also في علم التفسير. يعني now مثلا, just in order to يعني bring it close to your مثلا fields. Now, what's your specialty? Biology. Okay. Now, again, يعني if Umar radiallahu anh disagrees with biology, is he going to be influencing anything? No. Because this is not his specialty, radiallahu anh. If prophets, just by their pure opinions, disagree with biological issues, just by pure opinion, not through revelation, then they might be correct, they might be incorrect. So therefore, if we find a consensual agreement amongst the biologists on an issue, and we need to establish it, then they are the people of consensus in that field, not chemists, physicists, okay, geologists, وهكذا. So then, or يعني مثلا grammarians, literalists, we're looking for the people of the field, okay, the specialist in the field. If they have a consensual agreement on an issue, then this is the consensus that we're looking for. Then he said رحمه الله, وهذا مهم جدا in the report of al-ijma'. So when we're talking about ijma', if this ijma' is related to tafsir, then it's the consensual agreements of who? Of the interpreters, of al-mufassirun. If it is related to al-hadith, the same. If it is related to grammar and nahu, linguistics, then the consensual agreement is looked for amongst the specialists in these fields. then سيد رحمه الله والمقصود هنا أن تعدد الطرق مع عدم التشاعر أو الاتفاق في العادة يوجب العلم بمضمون المنقول لكن هذا ينتفع به كثيرا في علم أحوال النقل. He said that the point being made is that A narration possessing multiple transmissions in which no collusion or agreement is possible is sufficient in establishing the content narrated. This is more beneficial when one is aware of the state of the narrators. Okay? He just reporting the thing that we went over before. Okay? يعني the narration is either مثلا, look, we can say that the narration is either to be reported by a chain or without a chain. We can categorize it in this way. When we have any narration, any report, any story, it's either to be reported through a chain or without a chain. Okay? If it is reported through a chain, then the first examination is going to be what? Examining the chain. The two major things that we're going to look for, this is at first, we need to make sure that we trust those reporters, and secondly, we need to make sure that everybody reports from the other one, which is the connection, the ittisal. Okay, this is the first two considerations that we need to reckon. Now, if it is, however, without a chain, then what we're looking for is the caveats. Okay, if we have it without a chain, we have a reporter, but there is a possibility that even if we don't have a chain, that we can recognize the authenticity, or we can know the authenticity of that report, or to be also or the unauthenticity of it. Okay, there are multiple ways. What's the frame of work that we are looking from within? That there are four caveats. We try to make sure that the report will escape. First, it is not a mistaken. Secondly, it is not a lie, meaning that he intentionally wanted to report something that is not real. Thirdly, that there is no collusion, and thirdly, there is no coincidence. Okay, if it escapes these, then it's a must. It's a must to be true, and we have rationalized this. Okay, and we provided the evidences for this. Then he said, رحمه الله, وفي مثل هذا ينتفع برواية المجهول والسيء والوحف. نعم, طيب. What he's saying, رحمه الله, sometimes the ulama, they are looking at these reports not only to affirm or to reject the attributes, but also to examine the state, or to examine the trustworthiness, the credibility of the reporter. Sometimes they know that the report is wrong, or they know that the report is correct by multiple means, but they will focus on these reports in order to know the credibility of the reporter, whether that is reported within a chain or without a chain. Okay, but as they said, rahimahullah, this is more beneficial when one is aware of the state of the narrators. يقول لكن هذا ينتفع به كثيرا في علم أحوال الناقلين. What he's saying, rahimahullah, if we have a reporter who is reporting a lot of reports with disconnected chains. Let's say that he reports 100 reports. Okay, more than 70% of these reports are disconnected. But what we notice is that even these disconnected reports, they will match trustworthy, already established to be credible reporters. So they examine the reporters, not the reports. Okay? ولهذا he said وفي مثل هذا ينتفع برواية المجهول والسيء الحفظ وبالحديث المرسل ونحو ذلك. ولهذا كان أهل العلم يكتبون مثل هذه الأحاديث ويقولون إنه يصلح للشواهد والاعتبار ما لا يصلح لغيره. قال أحمد قد أكتب حديث الرجل ليعتبره، ومثل ذلك بعبد الله بن لهيعة قاضي مصر، فإنه كان من أكثر الناس حديثا ومن خيار الناس، لكن بسبب احتراق كتبه وقع في حديث المتأخر غلط، فصار يعتبر بذلك ويستشهد به، وكثيرا ما يقترن هو والليث بن سعد والليث حجة ثبت إمام. You see, In this regard, one may benefit from the narrations of an unknown narrator, or one possessing bad memory, or a mursal hadith. For this reason, the scholars would write down such narrations and say, what can't be used as evidence itself may be used in order to support another evidence. Imam Ahmad would state, I may write the narrations of a man in order to consider them. He then gave Abdullah ibn Lahiyah, the Egyptian judge, as an example of such a man. He was a pious man who narrated many hadiths. But when his books were burnt, his later narrations had mistakes in them. So he was a narrator, considered and used to support others. He is often compared to Layth ibn Sa'd. Layth was a trustworthy authority and imam. So what he's saying, rahimahullah, like what you say, let's suppose that we have an unknown reporter. We don't know him. What does that mean that we don't know him? Either that we don't know that person in himself. Yeah, we don't know if he's a creator or not. Or we don't know his state, his trustworthiness. We don't know. But let's suppose that we have a reporter whom we find 4 trustworthy people reports from, and they constantly report from him. What does that mean? That they accept, that they trust him. Let's suppose that we have one unknown person, only one reports from him, and even the one who reports from him is unknown. But we find that the narrations comes from this chain is what? Matching those who are credible. Okay? So what do we deduce? That person has some credibility. Because it is impossible that they are coming from different ways, and we are sure that he didn't take them from others, and he constantly mentioned the trustworthy people. So we deduce that person has credibility, although we don't know him. Okay, right? فلهذا sometimes we use the reports not to examine, we examine multiple reports without the intention of affirming or negating the reports, but to examine the ways. Okay? Sometimes it is going to be determined by the nature of the reports. مثلا, let's suppose that we have 3 people. One is, we completely don't know him. Another person that we know that he was created, but we don't know about his situation, his credibility. And one is that some people say, some ulama consider him to be weak. They know him and they say that he is weak. Now, for the first person, we find out that any reports that he reports, there is no oddity in it. There's no weirdness in it. He constantly, let's suppose that he has 5 narrations, and all these 5 narrations, although that he is completely unknown to us, whether that he's a creator or not, that person. But we know that it is impossible for the one who took it from him, that he took it from others. And he reports it from that person. And he constantly mentioned the reports of the trustworthy. So what do we conclude about that person? That he has credibility, right? Although we never met him. We are not even sure that he is a creator. But we say that if this person is created, then he is what? Trustworthy. Or that he has some trust, credibility. Why? Because all these 4 caveats are avoidable or avoided when we examine the narration. Now let's go to the second one. Now that one, we see مثلا that he reports something very important, مثلا related to Aqidah. Okay? But we find that all the scholars of al-Hadith, who reported from him, they all agree on accepting that narration. They desire it, they want it. And he's the only one reporting it. So then what do we say? Like Abdullah ibn Khalifa, the one who reports it from Umar, that Allah Azza sits on the قال يقعد على العرش يقعد ويجلس على العرش. هذا الرواية. يجلس, to confirm the يجلس, to sit on the throne, not to only ascend, to sit on the throne. All the ulama of al-Hadith, they will accept. All. So what does that mean? What they have done? they find out that the one who takes it from is certain about it and constantly reporting it, and there is no negation. In the first time that he stated it, and then the second generation and the third generation until it reaches the scholars. So they come to the conclusion that this is what? Credible. That they know the credibility of that person. واضح? طيب, what about the one who is weak? But that weak person reports in these particular issues things that are matching those who are already established to be credible, trustworthy in these particular matters. So then what do we know? That he is also credible in these reports. واضح? Although he is generally weak, but in these reports he is credible. ولهذا هم يقولون قد يثبت الثقة، قد يثبت الضعيف ويضعف الثقة. It is possible that the trustworthy will report that which is not acceptable, and it's also possible, حديثي في الحديث, not the rational possibility. It is also possible that the weak will report that which is acceptable. Okay, مثلا, for example, حديث الليث عن مجاهد, that the Prophet ﷺ will be on the right side of Allah Azza wa Jal on the day on the throne. هذا الحديث all the ulama accepted. All the ulama accepted. يعني علماء أهل الحديث, they never considered to be rejected. Never considered to be rejected. But the thing is that this is the reason why the ulama rahimahullah will take into consideration these reports without the intention of looking at the report, but with the intention to look at the reporters. He said rahimahullah, قال أحمد قد أكتب حديث الرجل ليعتبره ومثل ذلك بعبد الله. He said that Imam Ahmad rahimahullah would state that I may write the narrations of a man in order to consider them. ما يسمى بالاعتبار. الاعتبار يا إخوة has 3 levels عند المحدثين, or 3 types. When you hear الاعتبار يعني consideration. Sometimes الاعتبار meaning consideration in looking what the subject matter that he's reporting. That we will consider what the subject matter that reporter is reporting. And this is a whole science. Okay? Another type of consideration or اعتبار is what we call المتابعات والشواهد, which what the author rahimahullah wants here. He says, what is المتابعات? Look, for the earlier generations, when they are talking about the shawahid and the mutaba'at, they are used interchangeably. Okay? المتابعات how we translate it here? المتابعات following narrations, or different narrations, multiple narrations. Okay? So for the earlier generations, we're talking about Ahmad, Abu Zur'a, al-Bukhari and those, they would consider al-mutaba'at wa shawahid, they are the same. Shawahid witnesses, basically. Witnesses. The later generations, they have differentiation. They say that if it is Sahabi, if we have hadith reported by Sahabi and we have the same hadith reported by another Sahabi, then we would consider it to be Shahid, we call witnesses. Below a Sahabi, if it is a Tabi'i, and so on and so forth, they would consider it to be what? Mutaba'ah, they call it. They call it Mutaba'ah. So al-Mutaba'ah is by Sahabi. A Sahabi is followed by a Sahabi, they would call it Shahid. If it is, however, in the classes below a Sahabi, they would consider it to be Mutaba'ah. Then this Mutaba'ah is either to be what they call complete Mutaba'ah. Complete Mutaba'ah meaning that they agree on the Shaykh of al-Musannif or the reporter. مثلا, if what's your name? What's his name? Talha? Salahuddin. If Abdullah and Salahuddin reports from the same Shaykh, what is your name? Hamad. So if both of you reports from Hamad, then what do we say? Ali is mutabi'un li Abdullah in the report from Hamad. This is called complete mutaba'ah. Okay? But let's suppose that you don't meet مثلا Imad reports from Muhammad. So instead of meeting with Abdullah in Imad, you go to Muhammad. Then both of Muhammad and Imad, they report from Salih, let's say. This is what we call incomplete متابعة. متابعة قاصرة. Okay, متابعة قاصرة. This is second type of what we call اعتبار. هذا الاعتبار. A third thing is that they say al-i'tibar, meaning that we write his hadith, but we don't use it as authority. Okay, this is also one of their terminologies when they say i'tibar, consideration, meaning that we write the hadith, but we don't consider it to be authority. What does that mean? It is under consideration, and it is under scrutiny, under examination. Okay, يكتب حديث ولا يحتج به. You'll find this is used a lot by the likes of Abu Hatim al-Razi. يكتب حديثه ولا يحتج به. What does that mean? You don't take it as authority, but you will examine it. تنظر في حديثه. You reckon his hadith. You contemplate over his hadith. You think about it. You go through it. وهكذا. So then we have three meanings of what we call al-i'tibar. Okay, Ahmad rahimahullah here. So then, again, what are they? The first meaning is that al-i'tibar, meaning that we look at his hadith in terms of the subject matter. The second meaning of it is what? Al-mutaba'at and al-shawahid. Okay, witnesses and followings. The third one is that his hadith is written but without authority. Okay? These are the three meanings. So when Ahmad rahimahullah said قد أكتب حديث الرجل ليعتبره, he's looking for المتابعات. He's looking Ahmad here for المتابعات. What does that mean? As the author rahimahullah said, Abdullah ibn Lahi'a, he was a judge. He was a judge in Egypt. And Egypt is what? It's a great. Egypt is a big civilization. It's not a small place. It's complicated. So Abdullah ibn Lahi'a rahimahullah was the judge of Egypt, meaning that he was amongst the judges. Okay, Egypt needs a lot of judges to be covered. He rahimahullah, he was definitely, he is pious. He is actually one of the leaders of Ahl Sunnah. But what happened is that he used to depend on his books. If he wants to report, he used to report from his books. Because of this dependency, his books were burnt because his house was burned. And then he didn't have the books to report from. So then now he will depend on memory. And his memory was not good because he used not to use it. Okay? He didn't use it. And then what happened? The ulama rahimahullah noticed that bada bil-takhlit. He used to mix things. Immediately they will notice it. Sometimes they will notice it by months. They will tell you that in the month of this year, he began changing. They will tell you that. Because sometimes they will keep observing the reporter. They will come to report from him this year, then after 6 months, like Shu'bah used to do that. Then after 3 months he will come, after a year he will come, after 10 years if they are still alive, he will come to check him. Constantly under observation. ولهذا they used during the time of tahdith, if the family or the friends or the students of the reporter, of a Shaykh, they noticed that he began changing and he used to be trustworthy. So what do? They would stop him from reporting in order to maintain him. Because if the muhaddithun notice that he keeps changing and they don't have the ability to discern, they will reject him all. Whether that before al-ikhtilat we call it or after al-ikhtilat. Before the change, before mixing things up, or after mixing things up. So he will be exed. Okay? He will be, they will run away from him. Okay? فإذا Abdullah ibn Hayya rahimahullah, they have noticed that after his house was burned, he changed. Including to the, including the fact that he was what? A judge. Usually, not a, a general ruling, or not a, something consistent to be observed. But usually if the muhaddith is a judge, he might go down. Because he's busy. He's busy with with this job. It is consuming. So the thing is that Ahmad ibn Hanbali says that I will report that I might report from Abdullah ibn Hayya. Why? In order for mutaba'at and the shawahid, to follow, because I find something to support him. ولهذا he said, usually he comes, usually he is going to be followed by who? Layth ibn Sa'd. Layth ibn Sa'd al-Fahmi, or al-Fahmi. هذا, he was, rahimahullah, definitely he was an authority. He was a mountain in Egypt. Okay? فإذا, if we have a reporter from Abdullah ibn Hayya, then we find the Layth ibn Sa'd taken, reporting the same. Then are we going to reject Abdullah ibn Hayya? Sometimes we would say that, well, actually he is correct in that report because he is supported by Ibn Hayya. But look here, not necessarily that every mutaba'a is going to be correct, because sometimes the narration itself is considered to be weak. It's as if it didn't exist. So we don't support it. This is one of the major differences between the early generations and the later generations, let alone the contemporaries, that they would authenticate a lot of a hadith through what we call a mutaba'at and the shawahid. Okay, that what do? مثلا they find a hadith that person is completely weak or matruk. Another report is completely مثلا weak, or a person who is very weak, especially in that subject matter. So they will collect five narrations, 6 narrations. They will say it is what? Acceptable. They call it Hasan لغيره. It's reliable by others, not reliable by itself. They call it reliable by others. But the muhaddithun, the early generations, they will consider each one is what? As it didn't exist. As if it didn't exist. واضح؟ Then he said رحمه الله: وكما أنهم يستشهدون ويعتبرون بحديث الذي فيه سوء حفظ فإنهم أيضا يضعفون من حديث الثقة الصدوق الضابط أشياء تبين لهم غلطه فيها بأمور يستدلون بها ويسمون هذا علم علل الحديث، ومن أشرف علومهم، بحيث يكون الحديث وقد رواه ثقة ضابط وغلط فيه، وغلطه فيه عرف إما بسبب ظاهر كما عرف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم تزوج ميمونة وهو حلال، وأنه صلى في البيت ركعتين، وجعلوا رواية ابن عباس للزوجة حراما، وكونه لم يصلي مما وقع فيه غلط. وكذلك أنه اعتمر 4 عمر، وعلموا أن قول ابن عمر إنه اعتمر في رجب مما وقع فيه الغلط. وعلموا أنه تمتع وهو آمن في حجة الوداع، وأن قول عثمان لعلي كنا يومئذ خائفين مما وقع فيه الغلط. وأن ما وقع في بعض طرق البخاري أن النار لا تمتلئ حتى ينشئ الله لها خلقا آخر مما وقع فيه الغلط، وهذا كثير. He says, just as they use the hadith of the one with bad memory as supporting evidence, they may also classify the hadith of a trustworthy and reliable narrator as weak, due to apparent and clear errors in some narrations. This is known as the science of ilal al-hadith, the hidden defects in hadith, and is one of the most noble and advanced sciences in the field of hadith. This is when one who is usually trustworthy and reliable makes an error in his narrations, and his error has become known. It is known that the Prophet ﷺ married Maymuna whilst he was not in a state of ihram, and that he prayed 2 rak'ahs inside the Kaaba. The narrations of Ibn Abbas, which state that he ﷺ married whilst in a state of ihram, and that he did not pray inside the Kaaba, are mistaken. Likewise, it is also known that the Prophet ﷺ only performed 4 umrahs, and that the statement of Ibn Umar which claims he made Umrah in Rajab is also mistaken. It is also well known that the Prophet ﷺ performed tamattu in a state of security during his farewell Hajj. Thus, the narration in which Uthman said to Ali, "We were in a state of fear on that day," is also mistaken. Another example of this is what is reported in some narrations in Sahih al-Bukhari. The hellfire will not be full until Allah creates another creation for it. This is also a narration which contains a mistake. Okay, so so what he's saying, rahimahullah, that they are not only looking for the hadith of the week to be supported, but also they will examine the report without the intention in looking the report, but to look at the reporter who is trustworthy, to go after him if he commits mistakes. And this is called, like what the Shaykh rahimahullah said, it's called the science of al-hadith, ilm al-hadith, ilm ilal al-hadith, astaghfirullah, ilm al-ilal. هذا it's very it's very meticulous, very deep. It's very difficult. Abu Zar'a rahimahullah, Abu Hatim, after the death of Abu Zar'a, he said, I don't know of anybody on earth who I can discuss this science with. Abu Hatim, during that time, almost in the middle of the second of the third century age. Since that time, this science is very difficult and very meticulous. And it needs a lot of you need actually to live this science, which is the science of al-hadith. So then one of their purposes to examine reports is not to establish the reports in terms of affirming it or authenticating it or rejecting it, but to go after who? The reporters, the narrators, to examine the reports, to go after them. Because for them, the default ruling for them is that you are mistaken until proven otherwise. You are not correct until proven otherwise. You are mistaken until proven otherwise. So they will go after you. They will examine the reports until they make sure that they pass the examination. Once they pass the examination, not necessarily they will accept the report, but they will say that report has reported what he heard. They reported what he wrote. That he, basically that he's not mistaken. He's not mistaken. Definitely the trustworthy, they are not going after him to see that if he's a liar, because they have already established that he's not a liar. But did he commit a mistake here? Does he commit mistake here? He's mistaken. هذا يسمى علم العلم. There are multiple ways of knowing this. How to discover al-illah. There are multiple ways. Because in the terminology of the earlier generations, and I think we talked about this في البيقونية, when they are talking about the defects in the narration or in the hadith in general, then they are not only looking for the hidden problems, but also they are looking for the unhidden problems, for the clear problems. In both cases, they would call them what? Defects. The later generations, they are the ones who are saying that the hidden defects, we call them ilal. Okay? It comes, you have a chain, appears to be good. Sometimes it appears, like the sun in the middle of the day. But there is a hidden problem, and they will discover it. Okay? So, but they don't, this is the illah. But if it is, there is a disconnection. They say that this is not a illah. They don't call it illah terminologically speaking. He said, rahimahullah, that then he mentioned several examples. He said that we know that the Prophet ﷺ married Maymuna wa huwa halal. Why? Because Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said that the Prophet ﷺ married Maymuna while he was in the state of ihram. ولهذا Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he is of the opinion, because they authenticate hadith Abdullah ibn Abbas, and it is في Sahih Bukhari. But they say that Abdullah ibn Abbas was mistaken. Abdullah ibn Abbas is trustworthy, more than trustworthy, but he was mistaken. They would say a Sahabi is mistaken. They will go after every reporter. Why? Because they said that Maymunah reported that the Prophet ﷺ married her while she was وهي حلال, that she was in a state of يعني she was not in the state of ihram. Also Abu Rafi, he was the messenger between them, and they say that he married her while she was in the state of without ihram. Clear? كانت حلالا. So Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu didn't witness the story, and we have the one that the story happened to him saying otherwise, and the messenger between them saying otherwise. So we say to Abdullah ibn Abbas, sorry, you are mistaken. You are mistaken. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, and this is also one of the ways that they support their opinion. We have Hadith Uthman, Surayh Muslim, that the Prophet ﷺ said, لا ينكح المحرم ولا ينكح لا ينكح المحرم ولا ينكح ولا يخطب. That the one who is in the state of ihram, لا ينكح, he won't marry someone else, يعني to be al-wali, ولا يخطب, nor he is going to propose. Okay? What do they say? لا يخطب ولا ينكح. They say that meaning that he won't have a sexual intercourse. They say that what about ولا يخطب? They say it's weak. Okay? The thing is that we know that this narration is mistaken by Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Also he said that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't pray inside the house, يعني inside the Kaaba. Okay? While Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he asked Bilal. He said that I asked Bilal the moment that he got out of the gate of the Kaaba, the door of the Kaaba, did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam pray inside? He said yes. He, Usama ibn Zayd, and Talha, they all prayed inside. So then we know that when Abdullah ibn Abbas negated this, we say that it is he is mistaken. He said, "La, you don't pray inside the house," because the Prophet ﷺ didn't pray inside the house. We say to Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu was what? Was mistaken. He said that he made 4 umrahs. We know that he made 4 umrah. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he used to say that he also made umrah when in Rajab. So he made how many? 5. Aisha radiallahu anha used to correct Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. He said that the Prophet ﷺ never made umrah but Abdullah ibn Umar, but Abu Abdurrahman, she said. Abu Abdurrahman, he's with him. So she's saying radiallahu anha, you are mistaken. So he ﷺ made 4 umrahs. The first umrah is umrah, Umrah al-Hudaybiyah. Then the following umrah is what we call Umrah al-Qada, and it's considered to be umrah. And thirdly, then we have Fath Mecca, after Fath Mecca, which is after he conquered Mecca, after Fath. He went to Al-Ta'if, then while he's coming back from Al-Ta'if, he took Umrah. A lot of Sahaba didn't know about it, because he did it during the night, while he is coming. Some of them that they were not even in Mecca, they're still in Al-Ta'if, so they didn't know about it. And fourthly, the one that he did with his Hajj. These are 4 Umrah. As Anas radiallahu anhu said, through the chain of Qatada and Anas, اعتمر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 4 Umrah. Then he went on to count them. And Anas was the khadim, was the servant of the Prophet. He was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also he mentioned that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam made tamattu وهو آمن في حجة الوداع. That آمن مكانس, as Aisha radiallahu anha said, because Uthman radiallahu anhu, he used to argue with Ali radiallahu anhu. You know, Umar and Uthman, they were of the opinion that it's better to make Hajj when you are mufrid. You don't combine Umrah and Hajj. What's their argument radiallahu anhu? They said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Uthman radiallahu anhu, well, first of all, Umar radiallahu anhu, he was of the opinion that if we ask people to come and combine between Umrah and Hajj, then the house of Allah for the rest of the year, nobody would come. Okay? So he said that it is better to separate them in order to make the house always busy. As for Uthman radiallahu anhu, he used to argue with Ali. He used to say to him that the reason because of which that we made Umrah and Hajj during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, because we were afraid. This is how the report goes. That's why we combine between them. But ulama al-hadith, they say that narration is what? Weak. Yani Uthman cannot say that. They were very secure. Very secure. And the Prophet ﷺ was ruling all over the Arabian Peninsula. How Uthman radiallahu anhu would not know that? So they know that this narration is what? Mistaken. Even if the one who reports it is very trustworthy. Like we know that he is what? He is mistaken. Not because of Uthman radiallahu anhu. Because Ali radiallahu anhu, he used to opine that we make tamattu. It was said to him, كان يخبط في الصحيح كان يخبط رضي الله عنه. He used to hit the tree so that there will be some leaves for his camel. So someone came to him while he's يعجن mixing stuff. So he said that this is what Uthman said, and that's what he commands. He said لبيك عمرة متمتعا بها الحج. It's صحيح. So he used رضي عنه to say, he used to opine that is tamattu. ولهذا علي رضي عنه used to opine that we can that you can make tamattu. He used to opine Umar and Uthman. It's also the opinion of Abdullah bin Abbas. Actually, Abdullah bin Abbas used to consider it what? Obligatory to make tamattu. He used to stay inside, after al-miqat. If you don't make tamattu, he will ask you to return to make it tamattu. And they used to say to him, like Urwa ibn Zubayr, كان يقول له, we say to you, Abu Bakr and Umar, this is their opinion. And then he used رضي عنه to answer في الصحيح. قال أقول لكم قال رسول الله وتقولون قال أبو بكر وعمر يوشك أن تنزل عليكم حجارة من السماء. I say to you, Allah, I say to you, Allah says and His Messenger says, or he said that I say to you, the Messenger of Allah says, and you say قال أبو بكر قال عمر. I say to you, the Messenger of Allah says. Then he said that I expect that soon you will be hit by stones from the sky. Meaning you oppose the statements of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he used radiallahu anhu to be very strong. He was so opinionated about this, so opinionated, to the extent that one of his servants, one of his students, by the name of Nasr bin Imran al-Dubai, Abu Jamra, he came to him and he said that I saw a vision, that I made tamattu. Then it was said to me, في التمتع عمرة حجة متقبلة وعمرة مقبولة. في الصحيحين حديث. He said that he was so happy, and Allah bin Abbas, فأمر له بشيء. He gave him a big gift. He was so happy. فهي was so opinionated about. فلذلك كان يقول بوجوب المتعة. ابن القيم رحمه الله he opined هذا. he took what Abdullah bin Abbas رضي الله عنهما used to opine. لكن الصحيح that التمتع for the one who does not bring al-hadi with him, it's definitely highly recommendable. Highly recommendable. ولهذا أحمد, he was of this opinion. Ahmad was of the opinion that you make Hajj as tamattu. So he was approached by a person. He said to him, look, Ahmed, I love everything about you, except this issue. Because you are not going with Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman. He said, Ahmed, rahimahullah. He said, I don't care about you. I have 14 hadith. Why I would care about you? I have 14 hadith. Do you want me to care about you? You don't love me. So what? Some people are so insecure, their psychology is so insecure that they care so much about what people say about them. مثلا if they don't feel مثلا someone will say negative things about them, they are bothered. Don't be like this at all. لا تجعل الناس معيارا لك. عاير نفسك by what? Like what Ahmed said. I have a hadith. You measure نفسك by what? By الشرع. By kitab and sunnah. طيب, he said also one of the things that which is reported in some narrations in al-Bukhari, not in all narrations, in some narrations in al-Bukhari, which is completely mistaken. It says that, you know, al-Jannah, it won't be filled, right? Until Allah created creation to يعني put them in al-Jannah. النار, in some narrations في حديث أبي سعيد, وأما النار فينشئ الله خلقا آخر لها. That النار won't be also filled, so Allah will create a creation for it to be filled. This addition is completely weak. Weak narrationally, also in terms of the meaning. Because how would Allah punish people? He would create people just to be punished. والعياذ بالله. تعالى الله عن هذا. But for Jannah, it's the bounty of Allah. فضل من الله. But the hellfire is the justice of Allah. He wants subhanahu wa ta'ala creates people just to be punished, just to be filled. Allah won't do that, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why narration is weak. So we don't know, we don't need to go and try to interpret it or reinterpret it and to find a solution for it. لا, it's weak. ولهذا المحدثون, they have a very good statement. What do they say, Abdullah? أثبت العرش ثم انقش. Establish the throne, then you go to adorn it. What does that mean? Make sure that it's established. ولهذا you won't find the people of the hadith say وعلى فرض صحته such and such. If it were authentic, then we would understood it this way. لا ما يقولون هذا. يعني أثبت العرش ثم انقش. Establish it, then we will go to find out if there is يعني possibility of يعني interpreting it. Okay, like they don't assume it authentic, then they go to interpret. ما يفعلون هذا. This is the fuqaha. This is how the fuqaha say. فهم يقولون تجدهم وعلى فرض صحته, then we would understand it in such and such manner. يسيد رحمه الله والناس في هذا الباب طرفان. طرف من أهل الكلام ونحوهم ممن هو بعيد عن معرفة الحديث وأهله لا يميز بين الصحيح والضعيف فيشك في صحة أحاديث أو في القطع بها مع كونها معلومة مقطوعا بها عند أهل العلم به. وطرف ممن يدعي اتباع الحديث والعمل به كلما وجد لفظا في حديث قد رواه ثقة أو رأى حديثا بإسناد ظاهره الصحة يريد أن يجعل ذلك من جنس ما جزم أهل العلم بصحته حتى إذا عارض الصحيح المعروف أخذ يتكلف له التأويلات الباردة أو يجعله دليلا في مسائل العلم مع أن أهل العلم بالحديث يعرفون أن مثل هذا غلط. He says rahimahullah, people are of two extremes in this issue. Now, what is this issue? يعني just because there is hadith we will accept it, or we won't accept it until it matches our standards. He says rahimahullah, a group of scholastic theologians. You know, scholasticism, scholastic theory, because if you say scholastic, then this is related to schools. You know, this is there is an entire school of philosophy. It's called سكولائية أو المدرسية, scholasticism, right? You don't know scholasticism. Anyways, so he says that a group of scholastic theologians and their likes who are unfamiliar with the science of hadith and its scholars do not differentiate between authentic and weak narrations. This causes them to doubt the authenticity of hadiths, even though they are classified as authentic by the scholars of the science. And we have a lot of people like those. He said that we will accept hadith and we will reject it. Okay, based on what? Based on our methodology. Okay, let's examine your methodology. It's just horrible. Horrible. It's not even a methodology. It's exaggeration if you call it even a methodology. It just pick and choose. Well, if it fits me, if I'm comfortable with it, or sometimes does it match al-aql or not? Do you think that those people, they were not considering this? You are coming to tell Ahmad, Abu Zur'a, Abu Hatim, Shu'bah that they don't, if it matches al-aql or not. It seems that you don't know about the literature at all. Sometimes they will reject a hadith, the entire hadith, because say it does not match al-aql. Sometimes they will say it does not match what? Al-shara'. They know about it, but not you. And sometimes you would consider it to be it will oppose al-aql because you don't understand it. You understand it wrongly. That's why you think that it opposes al-aql. It opposes your understanding, not the proper understanding. If you understand it properly, then you will accept it. The things that we leave it to the people of al-hadith. Those are the specialists. If you like to be like them, you study like them. Okay, this is not a cult. It's open, but you need to study. You don't come, spending your time watching, football, while they spend their entire life in seeking the science. And then you say, well, it does not make sense for me. So what? Yeah. Your standard is, watching football. How do you reject? How do you say, sitting on your couch? They say, well, this hadith, does not make sense. Yeah, it does not make sense to you. Like if you see just a very simple equation, it does not make sense to you. Because you don't study. They spend their entire life chasing the hadith, going after them, in order to make sure that which is reported to us is either acceptable or rejectable. ولهذا, it's not a cult or a secret society. It's very open. It's actually very encouraged. But if you are able to do it, you need to do the effort. Definitely, you need a lot of effort. If that's the case, you can participate in the process. You can be amongst them. Then we have the other. مثلا, can you say that Al-Ghazali authenticated this hadith? لا. It's like you saying Joe Biden authenticated this hadith. Okay? Nothing there, nothing. Or if you say that he rejected this hadith. So what? No addition, no subtraction. It's zero, nothing. It's non-existent. Okay? He said that the other group claims to follow hadith wherever they find a wording narrated by a trustworthy person or a hadith which appears to be authentic, considering it to be from among those hadiths whose authenticity has been established by the scholars. And what does rahimahullah, the author say? He said that you will find people claiming that they are followers of hadith and they revere hadith and they they would take it seriously, but without taking it in the way of the people of al-hadith. Again, just because there is hadith, they would say that we are the people of al-hadith. لا. ولهذا, you will find some people who adhere to al-hadith, the reality is that they are not accurate and they're attributing themselves to the people of al-hadith. In many occasions, they love al-hadith, but they don't know how to accept it or reject it. So just because it is hadith. واضح? So we have two opposite sides. Those who they will reject al-hadith based on their standards, with the belief that the people of al-hadith, they don't know how to sort things out, or the opposite, which is the extreme, that we will accept no matter what. Okay? ولهذا أنصحكم بكتاب لابن قتيبة. It's called تأويل مختلف الحديث. And he rahimahullah established this, and he argued very, very good arguments. Look here, the majority of these shubah now against the sunnah, by the way, against the sunnah, they are not new. Al-Mu'tazila, they raised these issues way before them. The fact of the matter is that I would argue that many of the Orientalist shubuhat, doubts, that they are casting doubts amongst Muslims and non-Muslims to alienate them from accepting Islam, they take them from Al-Mu'tazila, because they used to argue against the Book of Allah, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, especially the Sunnah. That's why Ibn Qutaybah rahimahullah, he wrote this good book called تأويل مختلف الحديث, and he argued with them. Either the issues related to a Sunnah itself, or that is related to the men, the reporters of a Sunnah, or the content itself, a Sunnah, the Hadith itself. All these arguments that I would expect you to hear on YouTube or on the social media or on TV, any issue you can think of, تقريبا, approximately you can you can say that more than 85% of the issues raised against the Sunnah, they were way raised back by al-Mu'tazila. They raised these issues in order to reject the Sunnah. But their purpose was to claiming that they want to maintain a deen, to maintain the religion of Islam from being corrupted and so on and so forth. But a lot of people, they want to corrupt Islam. Yeah, they say that Islam is wrong. The Christians or the secularists. He said, rahimahullah, even if they contradict a well-known and authentic hadith, they will instead, مثلا, they don't care about ilm al-ilm that much. They don't care about it. As long as, okay, we have a chain. مثلا, we find في Sunan ibn Majah. It is reported في Sunan ibn Majah. Ibn Majah, he, rahimahullah, reported these weeks hadith intentionally. Okay, he looked for what we call the odd hadith. The odd hadith, the shad, hadith al-gharaib. He reported, rahimahullah, more than 1,400 odd hadith. Intentionally, he wanted to do so. This is his intention, this is his motivation to write his book. Okay? Then, he said, rahimahullah, and sometimes the hadith is weak, and it's known to be weak. Why? Because he reports it with isnad, just to tell the reader that it is weak. Because for them, if you report the isnad, and if you are amongst the people of al-hadith, you know that hadith is weak. Okay? It's very well known. By the way, they don't use to say al-hadith. They don't use to say, if they are discussing al-hadith, they don't say, مثلا حديث عمر بن الخطاب إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فما كان. They don't report like this. What do they say? حديث عمر في النية. Then everybody knows what that hadith is. Okay? مثلا حديث عائشة في البدعة. What? من أحدث في أمرنا هذا. حديث النعمان بن بشير في الحلال والحرام. إن الحلال بين والحرام بين. So they give like titles for this hadith. They know what they are talking about. If that person who's completely strange to the issue, sitting with them, they think that there is what? طلاسم. He does not know what's going on. It's the same if you attend, a class of physics or mathematics, and you know what's going on. You see that they are filling the board, go and they erase it, and they write another. And you think, why do you erase it? Why are you wasting your time? Right? Because you don't know what's the issue. I remember I was writing factors, factoring equations, and there were some students. You see, why we do that? It's just waste of time, literally. Why do you do these factors? In order to factor the first, the second, the third, وهكذا. Why we do that? Because he does not understand what's going on. But نحن عندنا في العربية, you have in English x and y, right? In algebra مثلا. The variables. نحن عندنا سين وصاد. Okay, سين صاد. But some students, you see, what we're going to do with our life with this? So x and y, so what? Why are we wasting our time? I will go and work in some office over there. So why are you concerning me about sin and sad? He does not know that in order to drive to his office, he needs sin and sad. In order to fly from continent to another continent, you need sin and sad. But he does not know. That's why he does not appreciate. He does not know what's going on. But even some people, they don't know about things and they go to speak badly about them. That's why you see a wave of disrespecting authority. Right? ما في أحد الآن مثلا if you say that person who is an expert in this issue, we know better. We know better. مثلا, especially after COVID, okay, the authority has been attacked so much from top down, so that you have an entire generation now, or a big chunk of the society, they don't respect authority. Okay, they don't respect authority at all, whether that it is governmental or private, or even individual. You'll find people, who are friends of scientists for at least 20 years. Now, even if they recommend anything for them, they don't accept. Not out of skepticism, but rejecting authority. We know better. Not that I will go and ask other scientists and try to check, fact check what you're telling me. لا, because I reject authority. We know better. We used to live, humans lived for centuries, thousands of years without scientists. This is how they think. Okay? ولهذا you see how they are so manipulated now. So easily manipulated because they think they got it. And if you see these studies after studies, academic, what they are doing, they don't learn anything. Okay, from where did you learn? From life. ولهذا this is very dangerous, very, very dangerous. Not only about the quality of the society that you're looking for, but also about the consequences. مثلا wars, so easily manipulated, spreadness of stupidity with the trust. Because look here, or confident. A person who is مثلا stupid or ignorance, usually stupidity or lack of knowledge will bring about incompetence, because you don't know what you're talking about, right? The difficulty is that when you encounter a person who is stupid or ignorant, maybe he's so smart but he's ignorant, but he's what? Confident. This is the problem. He speaks very confidently. مثلا an issue, people discuss about it day in and day out. They spend time, effort, money in order to solve it. He will speak about it so confidently, and he's so assertive. هذا مشكلة. He's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Then he said رحمه الله وكما أن على الحديث أدلة. طيب, stop here and we'll continue inshallah in the following session. Let's take الأربعين النووية inshallah, so that we will cover as much as we could بإذن الله. Where did we stop, Abdullah? طيب, any questions related to what we have covered so far? Yes, what's your name? Ya Sa'ad. هذا عبد الله بن خليفة. Yeah, and two people reported from him. Abu Ishaq al-Sabi, well, actually, the one who reported from him is Abu Ishaq. Then we have Thawri and Shu'bah, both reported from him. Thawri and Shu'bah both reported from Abu Ishaq al-Sabi'i, taken from Abdullah ibn Khalifa and Umar radiallahu anhu. هذا رواه عبد الله في السنة وكذلك ابن أبي عاصم في السنة. هذا درس. Okay. نعم.
What will you say about Imam Ghazali's books?
First of all, we don't, for us, we don't call him Imam. Okay, what do we mean? He is Imam for his people. Because what is Imam? Imam, the one who is followed. Definitely, is al-Ghazali followed? Yes, he followed by a lot. By a lot of people in our time and before our time. So he's Imam in terms of being followed. But he's not Imam for us, al-Ghazali rahimahullah. He's not Imam. How does he Imam while he does not know al-Hadith? He said, أنا ما يقول بضاعتي في الحديث مسجد. And he mentioned a lot of things. He's so confused about a lot of things. How do we make him Imam for us? Imam meaning that he will lead us. How we make a person who is confused to be a leader for us? Especially during the last stages of his life. He said that, well, I don't want theology and ilm al-kalam, nor I want philosophy, which is based upon reason. So how do you come to conclusion? He said through al-kashf, through meditation. That's why he wrote a lot of books, مثل جوهر النفس, إحياء علوم الدين, and a lot of, because he used to write a lot. The books of Al-Ghazali, first of all, you need to make sure that it's authentically attributed to him, because his books are of three types. We have books we are certain that he wrote them, authentically attributed to him. We have books that we are in doubt whether they attributed to him, but with more likelihood that he wrote them, or with more likelihood he didn't write them. The third type of books that we are certain he didn't write, he didn't pin them out. Okay? His books, generally speaking, look, in terms of al-usool, like al-mustasfa, or in al-fiqh, like in al-wajiz, they are good. Okay? But in terms of, psychology, the spiritual things, the aqidah things, okay? Or even sometimes logic, because he wrote also about logic. He's noticeably unsatisfying. He has a lot of mistakes, and sometimes he says very bad things. Very bad things. Okay? But the thing is that you feel that he's trying his best to reach the truth. But he was not supported by a good surrounding. He's smart, and sometimes he shows some genius attributes, in the way that he approaches things. But he is, in many occasions, he's definitely misguided. Sometimes he's starkly wrong. Sometimes he goes against i'tiqad al-salaf. He had a book called Jawahir al-Quran. He's mistaken. In many of his books, many of his books, he is either mistaken or completely wrong. ضلال. الغزالي ليس إماما من أئمة أهل السنة. ليس من أئمة أهل السنة. لا أبدا. الغزالي ليس من أئمة أهل السنة. You don't quote him as Imam Ahl al-Sunnah, or you report him to say that this is one of Ahl al-Sunnah. Look, if you say Ahl al-Sunnah in opposition to al-Rafidah, al-Shia, they are going to be included. حتى المعتزلة, they are going to be included. You say Sunnah and Shia, حتى المعتزلة, they are going to be included. In what way? Meaning that they accept the Sahaba. And by the way, not all of al-Mu'tazila. Some of al-Mu'tazila, they oppose the Sahaba. They are very bad. They have a very bad attitude towards them. Some of them, they say that Uthman or Ali, one of them is fasiq, but without specification. اللي هم أهل التحكيم. Anyways, فإذا you would consider him to be amongst the people of Ahl Sunnah in opposition to al-Rawafid wa Shia. But you can't consider him to be amongst the عند أهل الحديث. لا أبدا لا يكون أهل الحديث والأثر. ما يمكن الغزالي يكون إمام. He needs a lot of fixes. He needs to be fixed a lot. نعم. كلهم, حتى أبو المعالي الجويني, كل هؤلاء رحمهم الله وعافاهم. Some of them that you would say that they said the truth and they tried their best, but they didn't find out. So we say that they are going to be rewarded for their effort if they are with their sincerity, and they are given the excuse. والله أعلم. والله يغفر لنا ولهم. Yes. لا درء التعارض, again, this is a refutation of الرازي بعد. لكن this is one, because الرازي, he mentioned his قانون, his law, because درء التعارض, the 9 volumes, is to refute the قانون of الرازي. الرازي took it from who? الرازي took it, this قانون. He took it from الغزالي, and الغزالي took it from أبو المعالي الجويني. You know the law, okay, the principle that we just mentioned. When there is opposition between, or there is a contradiction between reason and revelation, what do? So as you notice, he assumed the possibility of what? That there is contradiction. Why we don't come with this assumption? And secondly, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he changed it completely. He said that we don't. Now, the evidence is looked at because of its entailment, right? And you don't take the evidence in order to put it, as a, furniture. Why do you need the evidence? Because of the madlul, because of what it entails. So therefore, if that entailment is either to be categorical or to be uncategorical. So hence, when we look at the evidence, we don't look whether there is revelation or reason. You look at its denotation. It is categorical or uncategorical. Then, anytime, the uncategorical would contradict the categorical, then you will go with the categorical. You will give a priority for the certain always, whether it is revelatory or reasonable. يعني مثلا Allah Azza wa Jalla says تغرب في عين حمية. Now the utterance appears, even if you don't go to the interpretation. And we're talking that without taking into consideration the interpretation of the Salaf. But when Allah Azza wa Jalla says تغرب في عين حمية, Shams will set where in the lake, in a mud. طيب, let's just take it like this. Now, it appears to be what? It appears that the sun goes into a mud, right? The appearance is what? Categorical. And al-zahir dhanni. It's not categorical. While the categoriality of what we sense is that it does not go into mud. So then what do we say? That we give a preponderancy to the categorical, and then we go to understand that based on this. واضح؟ وهكذا. فإذن this is how we deal with the question of reason, revelation and reason. Well, he went رحمه الله هذا in 9 volumes. طبعا محمد رشاد سالم in 9 volumes. It's هذا masterpiece. These are the 4 books for Ibn Taymiyyah. I don't recommend for you to read them now. You wouldn't. Anybody here read book from cover to cover in philosophy? From cover to cover. إذا ما يصلح لك هذا. Why يا إخوة? Because we tried it with professors, أستاذ دكتور. Maybe Abdullah, I think you attended some of the classes. Okay, they teach al-aqidah. They were not able to handle dar al-ta'arud. And I told them before we begin, the students, they were around the 12. I told them, they are not elite, but they are specialists. And I told them before we go that you will find it difficult. They say, let's give it a shot. Let's try. And it was on Wednesday, I remember, after Salat al-Isha. Then 1 month, 2 months. Then when we began in the second volume, almost 2/3 of it, they give up. They find it very difficult. They can't give up. And I أعرف one of المشايخ very famous. Well, I don't want to name him. Wallahi ya ikhwa, it is reported to me. He says that الحين ابن تيمية هذا في دار التعارض. أنت تدرون شو يقول? He said, do you know exactly what he's saying? But we don't want to mention his name. The one who told me, he was with him in القسم. ما كان يفهم. He finds it difficult to understand Ibn Taymiyyah في دار التعارض. So I don't recommend for you. Yes, these books, هذا دار التعارض. The second book is نقض التأسيس. The third book is منهاج السنة. هذا بعد. It's you might understand it, but not the first volume and the second volume. You might understand that after. And with that, I really don't recommend it for you. You need a lot of preparations. Then the fourth one, you can read it, which is الجواب الصحيح لمن بدل دين المسيح. And actually, you will read it inshallah when we go. And when we study the biblical studies, we will give you inshallah الجواب الصحيح. And it's alhamdulillah translated, and it was with the committee. And it's published. المختصر له مختصر الجواب الصحيح. by Dr. Sulami. Then it was translated. They have an institute in Jeddah. And visited them and a huge project. May Allah help them. They actually published it in English. مختصر الجواب الصحيح, and they want to spread it all around the West in English. فالمهم يعني درء التعارض, it's a very deep book. Very deep. It's a master. يعني if you would count 10 books in the human history, 10 very important books. هذا درء التعارض cannot escape the count. In my consideration, very difficult. I can't think of another book actually like this book. درء التعارض, amazing, very smart. Rahimahullah, very smart. Not only you enjoy it, you're so jubilant when you read it. Rahimahullah. طبعا if you are able to read it in Arabic, because they wrote it in Arabic, definitely if it's written in English then it's better to be read in English, لكن he wrote it in Arabic. لكن it's a very good book. يقول عنه ابن القيم وله كتاب العقل والنقل الذي ما في الوجود له مثاله. He said that for him there is كتاب العقل والنقل, يعني the reason and revelation, where nothing in existence like it. يعني in its subject, and he is completely right. I totally agree on that. كتاب العقل. If you are able to understand it, it's very difficult. It's actually very difficult, but it's enjoyable if you are familiar with the stuff, because you need 4 things. You need to be very rooted in Usool al-Fiqh, very rooted. Not Usool al-Fiqh, these متون that we read. لا, يعني أصول الفقه مثل المستصفى, المحصل, المأصول, كتاب الأرموي, كتاب الآمدي, هذه الكتب البيضاوي. And secondly, you need to be very well informed in الفرق, سكت. هذا علم. نحن عندنا في المسلمين عندنا علم اسمه علم الفرق, علم الفرق. And then thirdly, you need to be very well rooted in al-kalam. You know what they are talking about, those people. Fourthly, you need to be also very well rooted in logic, which would entail you know about philosophy. If you know about these, you can go to درء التعارض. Otherwise, تصير مثل أطرش بالزفة. Very difficult. And not only that, you won't appreciate. It's a huge cognitive effort. Huge cognitive effort. You can't produce like this just so simply. يعني very complicated questions. حيرت الناس. Very complicated questions. Very deep questions. يعني very deep questions. Sometimes you think that they are philosophical, but they have a very consequences in terms of beliefs about Allah, about the qadr, about science, and very complicated questions. He rahimahullah approached him in new ways. يعني to be fair also, many of the arguments that he developed rahimahullah, he is not completely original, but he benefited from a lot, but he extended it. The advantage that he has, he connects them to the Book of Allah, and you appreciate the Book of Allah so much. It's so much, and you believe that nothing would escape the Book of Allah. Many of the things that sometimes people, just when you mention an issue, any philosophical issue, geological issue, that you won't think about the Book of Allah. You won't never. He will find it in the Book of Allah. He will find a way. He will use evidences from the Book of Allah, from the Sunnah, and based on the understanding of as-Salaf, 3 generations. And he's so familiar with them, so familiar. ولذلك فإنه he knows how to quote, how to connect. ولهذا he's the way he connects things. ولهذا for you Westerners, reading Ibn Taymiyyah is very difficult because you're not used to this. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, 2 things that are very difficult for those who read it in his language, let alone those who are, especially Westerners. And Japanese, by the way. Japanese. You're used to one point, second point, مثلا you have a thesis, then you go to support with points, paragraphs, then the quotations will relate to this. You want to operate with Ibn Taymiyyah like this. First, he is so digressive. It's so normal. If you read Ibn Taymiyyah, you go 3-4 pages as a digression. This is just a digression. Secondly, he is so analytical. He is able to connect things. مثلا you are with the Mu'tazila, then you're going down to philosophers, bringing you back to Ahmad ibn Hanbal, again to Yazid ibn Harun, then you go back to Ash'ari. He does this. But sometimes you enjoy it, and as much as it is difficult, but you enjoy it. This, investigating, connecting the dots. It's amazing by him. But he is genius, Ibn Taymiyyah, definitely. He's very genius. He's very smart. Look, even non-Muslims like John Hoover, okay, he wrote about him a lot. He changed him so much. He changed him so much. He's now with maybe 15 years he studied Ibn Taymiyyah. He's a completely different person. And he didn't accept Islam. Allah la hadi. Allah la hadi. But he is very deep in Western philosophy. And he says that many of the things that we understand modern philosophy, this guy is talking about them way before us. He is way ahead of us. Now you see the AI, the artificial intelligence, he thought about it. He thought about it. He made a lot of statements and analysis about, epistemologically speaking, about these issues. فالمهم, if you want to read Ibn Taymiyyah and to enjoy and benefit, to enjoy cognitively, you need to be familiar with this stuff. Otherwise, you don't know what's going on. طيب